Hi guys, Richard here, trying to get back to normal after this hurricane and put out some videos. There's a lot of times I won't put out a video because I feel like there's just not enough going on to be interesting. But I think I'm just gonna start filming a lot more of the little things I do. And this one's kind of personal. So this is a garbage WD. I think it's hold on. WJ-750 Texarkana acoustic. Now, if you've never heard of the brand Texarkana, Texarkana is actually a city in Arkansas, and I believe there's a company that started there that imported these guitars from Indonesia in the early 2000s. This one's actually got a little bit of warping going on. But you might ask yourself, Richard, why did you buy this garbage piece of crap import guitar that is got 3 broken tuners and rusty strings and blah blah blah? Well, altogether it cost me about $27 shipped from where I got it. I got it from Goodwill, and if you never heard of them, don't be surprised. They weren't super popular. Obviously, they're just cheap. They were just guitars that you would buy if you wanted to buy a beater acoustic for someone who was learning, and that's actually how I got one of these back in the day. This is my first guitar, so what you are looking at is the first guitar I ever owned. Now, not exactly this one, but the same model. See, my very first band, we were called FF Thursday. We were actually an acoustic duo. It was just me on guitar. I'd only been playing guitar for about a year. And the strings on that guitar were super high. They're actually higher than this. But I used to play that guitar all the time. I would take it everywhere with me. I had a strap. I'd put a separate strap button up there. Even in the very beginning, I was editing my guitar. So I put a strap button in up here so that I could strap the thing to my back when I biked around, because we were just biking around everywhere. And this one's in super rough shape, and I don't really mind that because my old one was in rough shape, and these things are exceedingly hard to find. So it's not worth anything to anybody except to me for nostalgia. Now, that band, that acoustic duo, is like a comedy duo. I started with my buddy way back in high school, and it was part of the reason it's so important to me is because we were in a car wreck, and he had actually, unfortunately, didn't make it. And this guitar was with us in the wreck, and it was in the back seat, and it cracked like an eggshell almost all the way across here. And it was this huge crack that went down the sides. And so the only thing intact of the box of the guitar was the soundboard. When I was in the hospital for that week, I don't remember doing it, but I carved in the front of it in memory of my friend's name. And then eventually, when I moved later on, I ended up losing the soundboard to that guitar, so I had nothing left of it. So I got this purely for nostalgia and just because, I don't know. I saw this come up on the Goodwill auction site, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get that. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to play it. So hopefully all it needs is some new tuners. I don't have the crappy kind of tuners it takes. Like if you look at the back here, it's got those, run-of-the-mill, really cheap tuners that are just the metal caps that go over the gear. I do, however, have, just lying around, a set of halfway decent Keystone tuners. And I think those will do the job. So that's what we'll put on there. And again, it's not going to be much to this, just the deep cleaning, getting it all straightened up. You can hear the truss rod. Sometimes. The truss rod moves a little bit, but I think it'll be fine. All right, I've talked too much like I always do. Let's start taking this apart, and we'll probably have to ream out those holes to put in the new tuners. So there's not a lot to this kind of thing, as you may suspect. But being that this guitar is about 20 years old, some of these screws seem to be a little worse for the wear. Really, that one in particular. Now, I probably could have found a cheap set of these tuners, and that would be easier, just like direct replacement. But these things always feel kind of loose and crappy to me, and these aren't great, but they're a little better. So might as well go ahead. Not that this is going to be a standout guitar amongst my collection. Once again, this is just for me. And honestly, you know, you guys, I encourage all of you. If you're playing music, there's a good chance you're playing it because you love it. Part of that love is the stories that these instruments bring you. You know, it's not always just about, oh, did I get the most expensive instrument? Is this the best instrument? No, take it from me. I tend to get more good stories out of the worst instruments than the best. I can tell you one time I was biking around with this guitar and I rode by a power pole and smacked the headstock on the power pole. I heard it. I don't know if you guys have accidentally ever injured a guitar, but it makes a terrible noise. Just clang. And I freaked out because I knew I couldn't afford another one at the time, you know, and very poor. But I was like, no. So I stopped the bike, of course, and checked everything. And it was fine. So at least it was robust enough to handle that. You know, the neck's a little bit thicker than a lot of more better high-end acoustics. Alright, I'm going to continue taking these off. You don't need to see all that. One thing that always strikes me as odd is when people who are beginning guitarists start out with their dad's Gibson Hummingbird or something. Like they get a really expensive, super nice guitar, and they don't come from the same humble beginnings as a lot of guitarists do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with getting a leg up. But I was just thinking about how someone like that may not understand why a raggedy old guitar like this would mean something to me. And I was successfully able to get all the bridge pins out. So that's good. Yeah, these strings are gross. It's funny, a lot of times these guitars like this will be they'll be bought and then they'll be not played very much because the person who bought it to learn on, and they never really learn. And then it gets put in the closet, ends up in Goodwill, and it's had the same strings on it for its entire life. Yeah, I'm in my jammy jams, big deal. Anyway, I know a lot of people who watch my channel are new guitarists, so if you've never seen inside of one of these kinds of tuners, it's a very simple, like, stamped cover that just goes over the gear mechanism, which is usually pretty sloppy. Sometimes I will save these gears, though. I've actually used them in other tuners that have broken in other instruments. But anyway, and these are just like bent over on the sides. It's pretty cheap tuners. So these are usually worth replacing. But the shafts, if you see, have no collar around them. Let me grab a new one over here, just to show you the difference. So on the old one, you see the shaft has no metal collar around it, so like it's got no support there. The new ones do, and they have the collars that screw down into them. So that's a big difference in size. So you have to ream out your holes for your tuners to fit these new ones, because obviously they're not going to fit as they are. So that's definitely something to consider. Okay, I'll quit beating this dead horse about cheap tuners, but you know, as always, the screws, when you have things that are that cheap, they just strip so easy and don't want to come out. So I had to literally use pliers to get most of those screws out. But also the collars on these things, they're chromed, but they're usually plastic. Yeah, see that? Oh, I lost that one. But yeah, so that's why when you buy a cheap guitar or something like this, that's why a lot of people upgrade them so fast. It's because parts like this, they don't last forever. And a lot of the times, this chrome starts to flake off because it contracts and expands differently than the plastic underneath. So what you end up with is just, you get these flakes where you have these like white plastic looking tuners, and it looks terrible after a while. So these are always good to upgrade. Pro tip, don't push too hard, especially on these ones near the edges, because you can split the wood. So just go easy on it when you're reaming. If you don't have one of these, hop on Amazon, like $10, get you a reamer or two. They have saved my butt plenty of times. You can see the difference in hole size here, but once you get it, it should fit nice and snug. Now, if we put them in this way, we would have to drill new holes, but I think if I put them in the way that I would normally put them in, they might actually line up with one of the old holes. And then if we ever get bored, we could go back in and fill the extra holes. Okay, got all my holes reamed out here. I cleaned up my headstock on both sides because that's way easier to do without tuners. So if you are uncomfortable doing something like this, I would recommend pulling one tuner and seeing if just by chance you won't have to ream anything. Because, you know, on every guitar is different, so you may not have to. This one I did. Coconut is playing with my cut-off strings and other trash. And while it won't be a valuable guitar, every time I look at it, I'm going to be reminded of some good times with a good friend. You can see that these new tuners are way more stout, so I'm less likely to break one if I ever decide to ride my bicycle with this on my back again. Alright, so we've got our tuners on, and they have these little stickery thingies on the back that I was going to try to peel off all nonchalantly, but fortunately I'm going to have to be pretty chalant about it because they don't peel off that easy. So anyway, tuners in place. Actually, I'll show you the front. I haven't put the little collars on them yet, but yeah, I think that's going to work out just fine. Remember guys, use a nut driver to screw these on. Never use a pair of needle nose pliers. I did a video where I grabbed the tool that was next to me, which was needle nose pliers, and I got reamed for it on the internet, so I'll never do that again. Remember guys, always use a nut driver, never use needle nose pliers to tighten these down. So you've seen me do this on the channel plenty of times. I'm just going to clean the fretboard now that I've got my collars from my tuners tightened down, totally using a nut driver and not needle nose pliers. I'm going to go ahead and clean this fretboard, and I'm not going to polish the frets or anything because, you know, kind of like putting jewelry on a trash can, really. Fun story that you guys don't need to hear, but my buddy and I one time snuck up to the second level of the Pensacola Bay Center, which back then was called the Civic Center. And I had this guitar, and for some reason we had a loaf of bread. I can't remember why. But it was during a Reba McEntire concert. And he was balling up pieces of the loaf of bread. And bear in mind, I was 16. He was balling up pieces of the loaf of bread, throwing them at me, and I was batting them off the second balcony, the second story balcony with this guitar. So Reba fans got some bread that night, I guess. Percy was sleeping and holding my paper towels for me, but he woke up. I don't think he minds though. We're going to see how this thing takes the oil. And I know that 9 times out of 10 these cheap guitars have incredibly dry fretboards when I get them from Goodwill or something like that. So it was kind of unusual that this one did not. Alright, so it actually took the oil pretty well. As you see now, I've got strings on it. We're getting it tuned up. Alright, my friends, you have to forgive me for not necessarily wanting to be on camera. I'm a little disheveled after the last few days. But new tuners are super solid. They definitely don't have that wobble that the old ones does. I can't even remember why I bought these, but for whatever project that I needed them for, I'm sure I will still need them one day. But anyway, they're super solid, and it's got kind of that mid-rangey, little bit boxy tone that the cheaper kind of plywoody guitars have, but it's not bad. That's one of the riffs from my my first band. So is this one. You've heard me play this on the channel a little bit. not bad. I actually kind of want to put heavier strings on it because that guitar, when I bought it back in the day, had really heavy strings, and these are a little too light. Yeah, so this top, whatever it's made of, definitely does not project as well as my spruce guitars, but I'm stoked, guys. So thanks for watching this video and sticking with me through all the things recently. And tell me about your first guitar. I want to know, what was your first guitar like? That might be a cool thing. I'll talk to Daryl too, see if he can talk about his first bass on an upcoming video. That's always interesting to me, finding out where you guys come from. But thanks for watching and having fun with me with this very nostalgic Texarkana WJ-750 guitar made in Indonesia. Look forward to hearing from you. I'll see you next time.